Hello, welcome. This is Eyes Wide Open. Hans Utter Investigates, the first episode of a new podcast. And I'm really excited, looking forward to actually putting a lot of energy into this, covering a whole range of different topics, and also trying to foreground ways that we can learn more, understand more, become more empowered, and prevent some of these larger forces and patterns that are occurring in our world. And so I'll be covering a variety of topics. Like I said, this is just hitting the ball out of the ballpark. Day one, the first episode. I'm so excited. I don't know. I need like the champagne bottle. No, but it's great to be here. As the show unfolds, I would like to say that people are more than welcome to send me topics or things that might consider to talk about. I've done that for a number of different things. Even the large scale project I did with Jan was just because he had a guest cancel, and I had actually never thought about that particular topic, but it became like a very large series. So I'm open to different types of topics, but I'm also going to be featuring guests, and it's a great pleasure to be joined by William Ramsey, who's obviously, if you're watching this, you know who he is. But he's a great. He's an author. He's a broadcaster. He's a researcher. And he's also just an overall great guy. And so it's a real pleasure to connect here with William and really let him have the floor. So, William, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your first episode. I'm glad to be here. It's great to have the tables turned because you've been on my show like 15 times, maybe 12, 15 times. And those are all very well received and listened to. And people listen to them. Some people turn off podcasts like in the first 15 minutes, but some people listen to yours all the way through. Like you have a very long listen through rate. So it's really something else. So I'm really delighted to be here. Thanks.
Thanks, William. Well, I just maybe just starting off by what drew you to this, and now obviously you're pretty much committed to this particular say this endeavor, however we want to define it, and you're welcome to define it in your own terms. But how did you come to this from what you're doing before? Right, you have a law background, so how did you shift, and why did you shift to this other?
It's a good question. I mean, I kind of was always a reader. Like I always was kind of like a person. I got a liberal arts degree in history, so I was always reading history. I kind of stumbled into law school. Not very good GPA, but I had really good test scores. And so I was like, well, that's it. I would work for 2 years after college. One of my jobs was for Charles Schwab, like I was a number cruncher, like an intro job, and that wasn't going anywhere. So I ended up going to law school. I ended up picking a state school close to DC. And that was kind of where everything inverted for me because I had kind of a conventional education. I didn't really have people around me said a lot of the stuff on TV is propaganda. I used to watch CNN and thought I was getting informed. Like that's how bad it was. It's really embarrassing. So when I was in DC, I saw things that, you see it from the inside, a different take, and you can kind of see you see a lot of the, actually, surprisingly, a lot of the corporate news figures hanging out with politicians and stuff that you don't see on TV. So you see these guys having lunch together and they're friends, but it's not presented through to the public. So I started to see things from a different angle, a different parallax view. Kind of, we mentioned that movie in the pre-show or book. So that was kind of where I had to start doing my own research. I graduated, I passed the bar in 98. I've been a member in good standing in California since 1998. And then 2001 happened, 9/11. I was just totally jingo. I was on board. I thought 19 terrorists did it. And slowly my views changed. I kind of had another change was like, hey, the whole thing is baloney. They did that as a predicate to start war, start the war in the Middle East. So that sent me down another rabbit hole, and I was always just kind of doing my own research. And so then, my law career, like after 5 years, I was just burnt out. And so then I kind of did mortgages for a while, went through the 2008 crash. So I saw a lot of that financial shenanigans. Another bunch of that stuff that was never really disclosed to the public. Like there was this whole, it was called the MERS, which was the Mortgage Exchange Research Center. It was a MERS thing. It never made it to the public. But what they did is they created the big banks. You want to talk about bad bankers? The big banks created this additional structure to do an end around through the county recording office for your title, so that they could trade people's mortgages faster. They never got busted for that. And it was totally illegal. And it was just part of once they kind of paid out the 25 trillion to set everything straight, it was done. So, I'm getting more and more angry about the public, the reporting and things that I thought were important. So that's kind of when it kind of flipped to me. I never thought I'd be writing books. I never thought I'd have kind of a podcast broadcast. But that's kind of what led me to my first book, and that led me to the numerology of Crowley. Nobody was talking about the idea. There still aren't, but there's something really strange about 9/11 and all the 11s and the dates and the 11 years from George Bush Sr.'s New World Order speech, right? September 11th, 1990, right? Pretty incredible. Like you can either call it a sync or mystic sync or intentionality. So that led to my first book, and I really self-published that. I still have a copy of it around here. Like I think I really printed it out on my printer. So I was very aware kind of corporate. I didn't really want to go through a corporate thing. And they also don't give first-time authors very good rates. Like people said that I would get like 10 cents, net. Like you get nothing as a first-time author. No credibility, no respect. So that was my first book. And then that kind of I was really on shows. Like I'm glad that you're a host now, because that's what the position I was in, your position, really from 2010 maybe to 2016, just kind of grinding. I did my first book, Prophet of Evil, 2010, Abomination, 2012, 2014, Children of the Beast, 2017. I did, then I did this very long documentary about the Smiley Face Killers. But most of the time I was as a host, so I was always just trying to get on people's shows, and usually not many, but some of the guys like are still around. Like I was on JJ's GCD show, and now he's kind of working with the Occult Nick over at the Occult Rejects. But we go way back into like really fringe, the beginnings of kind of podcasting and fringes of YouTube, so to speak. But so then I worked for Ed Opperman. That was fun. It was a great time. I really enjoyed working with Ed, aside from him always accused me of being a Trump lover if I didn't agree with him. So that kind of ended I think it ended in 2020. I think 2019, like with all the riots and stuff. I was just like, I'm done, Ed. I think he's an open socialist. I think that's kind of it. So I don't really feel like that binary thing really works for me. Socialist, if I'm not a socialist, therefore I'm a capitalist. I don't really feel that way. Anyway, it was fun. I learned a lot from Ed, and we had very similar sensibilities. Like he was interested in all the same stuff I was interested. So it was really easy to in that point to be kind of I was kind of working as I call myself a producer. I wasn't getting paid, but it was fun to kind of send emails to people who were kind of in the same kind of research that used to be kind of more fringe. I think it's now something on the alternate media is changing to it's become more, it's not as sterile as the old corporate environment, and more of these leading figures are willing to look into things like we talked about mind control at the beginning. They don't, and it should be looked in by everybody actually, because it's so important, but that would be a no-go zone, for some people who thought maybe their reputations could be damaged by that. But anyway, I work for Ed. And then I started posting my shows. So I was trying to aggregate my shows where I was a guest on YouTube. And then I kind of flipped maybe at 2018, 2019 and started interviewing people. Like if I could find somebody to interview, people in my kind of field. And that was all on YouTube. And then I got heavily censored right after Biden came in. And they took down two of my YouTube sites. I was I was on YouTube. That's just what I did. And then I started uploading to Spreaker. So once I got censored, I was like, okay, I'll take the audio and put it on Spreaker. And then I looked at one day in listen notes and I was like, oh, I'm in the top 1.5% of podcasts in the world. So people were interested in at least trying to listen to what I was saying, you know. So that was kind of like a flip, and that was right during the pandemic. So then I was like, okay, I can try to do this, and I tried to get more guests, and hooked up with you and Sean and some of these other guys, and that's it. And so now, like where I'm at now, mid 2024 is my podcast. I have 5 books. I've done 5 documentaries, which you can see on Patreon, and my podcast is in the top 0.5%, so maybe the top 30,000, 35,000 podcasts in the world, and I have over 1 million downloads per year over for all of my shows together, and I'm at 1,200 episodes, so I have pretty long catalog, which
Wow.
includes like our shows 12. I think we've done 8 plus 5, or I think 13 shows. So that's it. So I've really kind of covered, and I try not to like pinhole, just try to like only do one thing, true crime, because I've done political analysis, I've done cultural books, I've had book book authors on of different types, and it's been interesting. It's kind of what I was interested in, so it's very idiosyncratic and things that kind of, and I feel like I've really only scratched the surface of all the research that I want to do, and I have all these projects to do, and I'm keeping busy, so I'm trying to stay busy and clear some projects and kind of continue with my podcast. So that's kind of the line. Now, the other thing, one of the interesting things I did when I was in law school is I worked for an attorney. He's still around. His name is John Clark with an E, and he represented Patrick Knowlton, who was at Fort Marcy Park when Vince Foster died. So that was kind of like where I was really kind of in a level of parapolitical intrigue, like palpable. Like it wasn't something that I'd read on a sketchy website 20 years ago. Like I would sit down with Clark. Like we would, he actually, John Clark was successful. If you remember the Kenneth Starr and the Starr report, right? He was hired to look into the Bill Clinton, which was written by Kavanaugh, who's now on the Supreme Court. But according to the Starr report, the 3 judges who sit in the DC federal court had John Clark and had him put the Clark addendum to the Starr report. So they included it. And Clark was the guy saying, hey, this whole story about Vince Foster is baloney, which it is. And so it was kind of like my taste of seeing something else from the different, and amongst other things in DC, a lot of sketchy behavior, interesting behavior, very eye-opening to say the least. But I think that may have like piqued my interest in maybe parapolitics or other explanations, or maybe looking farther into certain events, because I'd known that a lot of times they're just outright lying about everything on the TV. So I think that's where it really started, was almost like 30 years ago, 25 years ago.
Oh, well, that's interesting. There's, I think, I know a number of people who like 9/11, when they found out it may not be the exact story, they're having like a cognitive dissonance, mental meltdown. But other people, you're kind of not that surprised, even though it's surprising how how deep it goes. But of course, the level of corruption. I mean, the Clinton crime family. I mean, wow, going back to Mina
All the way back,
Airport,
all the way
all the
back
way.
to Arkansas. It goes all the way back. It
Well,
actually goes back to JFK because of Bobby Seale, right?
mhm.
Barry Seal, excuse me, Barry Adler Seal was flying all this cocaine. I mean, it's incredible because you can trace Oswald to Ferry to Seal to Arkansas Mena and the Clintons. Like that's
and,
how bad it is.
and Saul Alinsky, right? Rules for Radicals, and who was also the first manager of the Warlocks, who was also a protege of Saul Alinsky, the
Get
Warlocks
out!
being the
Wow.
Grateful Dead, and of course Clinton. And then you've got the great, the Weather Underground that was, that actually did bombings, that actually killed people and were an active, violent, highly educated terrorist group. That's one of the, well, it's sort of also connected, with the Clinton, Alinsky sort of radical left, with the silver spoon or whatever. But
Yeah, no,
anyways,
it's wild. No, it's really wild. I mean, those 2 people from the Weather Underground were friends of Obama. It was oh, what's the girl's name? The woman's name? I forget.
Bernadine Dorn.
Yeah, good memory. Bernadine Dorn and her husband or lover or whatever. but they go all the way back. They were associated with Leary too. Like Leary knew Bernadine Dorn. They busted Leary out of jail. That's my understanding.
And what's interesting, I don't have the quote in front of me, but maybe we'll, we do our show together. There's a quote about the, infiltrating the on the institutional level that's before any of the Frankfurt School Gramsci was translated into English, right? So this is pre Gramsci, but one of the Weather Underground people is talking in the 60s about this whole process, right? But he was taking it from Mao, right?
Wow.
From the Maoist position. But
Yeah, so it's there's a really corrupt underbelly in the United States, and it's around today. It's like, I mean, I think we know Biden isn't running the show, right? Like, you want to talk about parapolitics, because the two president and vice president can't like have two brain cells to rub together. So who else is running it? Like, that's the whole thing. It's apparently this guy Zentz, who's the chief of staff. But yeah, no, it's incredible. Like, it leads all the way up to today. Yeah.
And before we go into specific topic, it's just funny that my family from California, my grandfather, was big socialist, was very involved in a lot of different things. And so you kind of grow, at least, I thought, oh, well, the left is the good people, right? This is the people that care about, they're not just, the robber barons or whatever, but you see that most of these boundaries and definitions, I think you said at the beginning, they're not, you're creating a dichotomy of something that does not allow a clear perception of what is actually there, right?
So
And
true.
you know,
So on point.
hmm,
I really just read this very interesting quote from C.S. Lewis. I can't remember which book it was from, whether it was the Screw Tape Letters, but it's the devil sets up two so-called opposites, neither which one is right,
hmm,
which I made me think of kind of like this oppositional stuff, like, capitalism, socialism, whatever. And I'll see if I can find that quote. I'll send it to
yeah. Well, even like capitalism, right? To actually be a capitalist means you have to have capital. It means you have to be. I mean, we're not talking about normal exchange system, right? Which even a quote unquote free market, but actual capitalism. To be a capitalist, you got to be like a John D. Rockefeller. You got to have lots of capital to invest. I mean, in the strict definition of the term, but these things get conflated. And now we're at the cusp of this new equitable world, right? The global brain, the World Economic Forum, but it's the same. The language has shifted, but the end result is, you know, it's the same. It doesn't
You're
matter.
right. It doesn't really clearly define where we're at. You cannot call people who are against socialism capitalist if they can't handle a $500 bill. So, like, how many people are that? Like, half the country can't afford certain things. So, they're certainly not capitalist. And the other thing, America really isn't a pure capitalist state. There's like 40% of the people are getting handouts from the government, which is like socialistic. So,
Yeah,
um,
including the banks, right?
yeah,
2008.
dude, they're the biggest beneficiaries of government handouts, or the military industrial complex, or whatever. There was like I was watching this interesting video where this Russian guy was analyzing one of our drones. He's like, "This is what the Americans paid 250,000 for. I can make this for 50, rubles or something." Like, it was. He said it was just like they just sold the American taxpayer like just crap, and they just fly it over there like it's so corrupt. But yeah, that's supposedly capitalism. It's really more socialism.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's just one other question, sir, about your background before we move on to some specific topics. But so when there's a shift, right? There's a point, you know, at least, of course, I know Ed, worked with Ed kind of a number of years ago, but there's a point where I looked at this more like it's kind of like entertainment. It's interesting. I like playing around with this stuff. Everything I say is factual, but I'm not, I don't want to really take it that seriously because I mean, I do, you know what I'm saying? It's not that
I think so.
I'm not saying it's not serious, but when you get to the real reality, and it's almost like you're in this, it's like that They Live, right? That John Carpenter movie. You're seeing this other behind the veil, and of course the veil is there's not much of a veil left anymore, that's for sure.
Right, the curtain or the Wizard of Oz. Like there's
Yeah.
all kinds, and it's interesting. You're kind of going that line. When did you look behind the curtain? Like I've probably had 3 times in my life of whether shed my skin or look behind the curtain where I had to reorient my outlook because I was naive or I wasn't seeing the finer details or getting all the elements. Like, hey, there's more to this story than that. Like probably 9/11 too was one of those events in 2004 was like, how many of these other things have this government done? Which is a lot. Like if you want to go back to Gulf of Tonkin, there's suspicious things about Pearl Harbor, and I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. But yeah, like so, like people, I think it's also naive. Like, would governments do that to their own citizens? And the answer is, yeah, hell yeah, they do. They do it all the time.
Oh yeah. But so in terms of that, did you, and you're welcome not to answer this, but did it affect in any way, relationships with people? I mean, because it's also possible to lose your ground, right? People can get so caught up, you know what I mean? You lose the focus on sort of normal day-to-day life. But then also, I mean, I realized this after a while is that like you're not, most people, if they're not open, you're not going to convince them, right? And so, I
Right.
mean, I'm talking about, direct one-on-one type of things. A lot of times, I went through a period I was very sort of vocal, and it's like, you know what? Forget it. I mean, I'm not gonna make false statements, but I'm just not gonna. Someone's talking about how much they like Biden, I'm just not gonna enter into the conversation with them. But I don't. Does that?
I
But
think so. I think for sure. I think for sure. It's also like I think the internet has changed things where people of like-minded can kind of sync up who are interested in looking into things. But back then, you didn't have that. You were really atomized, and there might have been like other. There was rigorous intuition was kind of more parapolitical, or some of these other places. But I think that the psychology. I think that the real mind control, the psychology, the MK Ultra. That's behavioral psychology really is profound. It has a very, very, at least in my opinion, what happened to me, and it's probably profound, much more profound to the average American citizen than I think they realize. But it also it's put together to kind of put you in a lonely, kind of atomized self place of self doubt and wonder whether you're, part of the whole, because you're definitely an outsider on certain things. And I think they still maintain that, like they have. I think I mean, that just goes back to me seeing politicians having lunch with their media guys. They are behind the curtain shooting information at you that you're supposed to accept. And if you don't accept that, it's heresy, right? It's almost like you're a heretic because you're not accepting their power dynamic. And I think that me being in DC saying that um, the guy was killed at Fort Marcy Park. Well, that was heresy. That because everybody, I think it was easier for everybody who's a politician there to just say, "Yep, the guy got bugged out. I know he's the chief of staff. I know he's high powered. But he just decided at lunch to drive over to Virginia and kill himself." I mean, it was easier for people to say that, and then it's kind of like an bullying imposition of reality. So, and that's kind of a behavior psychology too, is everybody wants to think with a group, right? To feel inclusion or inclusive, which is a dangerous side of inclusivity, actually, because it's really groupthink. Yeah.
yeah, no, there's so many aspects. I mean, I think the big part too is that the there's this whole system of fracturing the psyche, right? Or creating certain of these kind of types of null points, like I mean, actually, like circumcision, or even like incubators and all this stuff. And then the medical system pathologizing everything, and then it just continues on and on. And so, I think ultimately, though, too, there's kind of like a void or an emptiness in a lot of people that they can't face. They're not willing to face it, and then of course it is all these sort of basic biological drives. I mean, the desire, it's like a natural desire. It's almost precognitive to be part of the group, right? If you were, back for thousands of years, if you were excluded from the group, you're gonna die.
Right.
You
Right.
you would die. It's not just about you're going to be, your social prestige is down. No, you would die, or you're going to be. But also, you know, Go ahead. Yeah.
No, but you're right. Then the rest of the group shuns you, right? So that's like, it's the worst. And it happens in cults, religions, all kinds of excommunication, right? Like you're no longer getting your sustenance, well-being psychologically or physically or materially from that group, right? So like you better toe the line.
Yeah, the truth, the ministry of truth is there. So, but anyways, yeah, great with all your work and continuing this journey. Because also, I mean, in a certain way, though, you are putting yourself out, right? You're a public figure, so and you're doing this, so it takes courage. So, just giving you a commendation.
Thanks. It's been interesting. I didn't. It's interesting because I kind of came out of that parapolitical, but I never thought it would really happen to me in that way. Like somebody went through 1,200 of my episodes trying to like figure out something they could get me on. My background, I've been like slandered and maligned, like really incredible stuff. And I can see what other public figures go through because they really do. Like it's a matter of power and control. There are elements out there who want to put their finger on whoever they can, blackmail them, whatever. And I didn't anticipate it being that palpable. Really, I was really something else. So all those other people who are public figures are probably all endure that, but they just don't talk about it. Like somebody's trying to put a finger on them or blackmail them. I do want to, I mean, contrary to common belief, I do want to be blackmailed. I just want them to send Jessica Alba or somebody like that. Not Jessica Alba. I mean, I think she's beautiful, but she's like a billionaire. Like, I wanted them to send their best.
Oh man, see what happens. You be careful what you wish for. But
I know.
yeah. No, well, that
probably just like hem and haw if I ever would. If she, I'd be like, oh,
yeah.
Anyway,
well, no, that's
just a little joke. That's a little levity.
Well, we'll see. When
you never know. I mean, who knows? These guys have a lot of money. The FBI spends $500 million a year on like agent provocateurs and trying to get information out of people. So maybe they could throw some money out. Who knows?
Well, and I won't go into. I experienced quite a bit of things also that I was like really blew me away. Like, why? Who am I? But I think also that I think part of it is too that you've got, if you have a certain level of integrity, some intelligence, and also relatively grounded. You're not sometimes just making an example. And there is also the cognitive infiltration, right? Cass Sunstein, right? So there's people that are allowed to continue, but they have to you can see they're pushing some type of narrative, right? That's false, right? But also there's, people that they just, they're just rapacious. They're trying to make money and they'll take payouts. But you can use, it's very easy to steer people. And also generating conflicts, right? Some of these flame wars, I never stepped into that, but that's another. You create, you know what I mean? Like these dissents, you get these people who are so caustic. It's like, dude, take a deep breath.
And some of it's fake, and some of it's done. I had an interview that was never published. Somebody wanted to interview me, and he kept asking me about Sandy Hook, and it was before the trial of Jones. He said, "What's your thoughts on Sandy Hook? What do you think? What do you exactly think?" And it was kind of outside of like anything anybody asked me. Like, no, I'm not a Sandy Hook specialist, but after that was done, I was like, this guy's trying to put me together. He wants me to say something in a recorded interview for one reason or another. And that was interesting. He never published that either. So I was like, can I get a copy? Usually most of the hosts will send me a copy of our discussion for one reason or another. That guy never did. And I kept asking. I literally sent 10 emails to him. Like, where's the interview? Where's the audio? Well, I figured out that he was disingenuous. It wasn't real. He just wanted to try to get me in trouble or something. Like get my, really pick my brain for whatever reason and waste his time and mine. I don't think it was a waste of time for him, but he wasted my time. But that's just one element. I mean, you wouldn't believe. I mean, operational security. These guys have to have operational security, especially like guys like Jones or Tucker Carlson or some of those others. So the perils are really there, and a lot of that stuff comes from the government. Like it's your own government. That's what's really scary. Is like some of this stuff is not it's not organic from like the polity. It's something else is going on.
Or
Pretty strange, yeah.
your anti-fall mind control people. Well, and that the Sandy hoax. I'm sorry, Sandy Hook. I didn't mean to say that.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
oops. But I had when I was doing my radio show, so I had people contacted me. I had the Halberg, that guy, the German American guy, that's the school security expert. So
Yes.
and then Jim Fetzer, I talked to him a bit, and there's a couple other people that were involved, and for whatever reason, I ended up never scheduling those interviews and going. But I mean, like that the Halberg, if I have his name wrong, but man, he lost everything. And then
Awesome.
and some of them, but Alex Jones, you almost wonder, like, is it $1.3 billion? I mean, how's that even possible?
It's crazy. It's crazy. He like said he was sorry. Like they wanted to get him. So this, I mean, that's the whole all element. It's like they use this as a defamatory, it's defamation supposedly to get him and just take everything. One point, these are non-proportional. It's the same thing with Trump. This is kind of a lawfare. Like most lawyers in this country should be embarrassed that it's gotten this bad. I'm embarrassed, but it's like it's non-proportional. Like, come on, give me a break, And they shouldn't be that. That's how merciless they are too. And that goes back. We were talking the pre-show about Lenin, like the mercilessness of what these guys on the left are capable of are off the charts. And that's what Solzhenitsyn said. That's really how I got to Lenin, the original stuff that Lenin was writing about, where it's like, hey, guess what? The reason the bourgeois revolution didn't stick is we didn't kill enough people. Lenin literally said that, like murder them. And so when you hear a Leninist say like, hey, I'm a Marxist Leninist, you're a serial killer, you're a mass murderer. But Solzhenitsyn gave interesting talks in 1975 about this subject. He's warning people, but the talks, that's how interesting he was. He didn't go to the elites or the media. He went through the AFL-CIO and the unions to give these talks that are really, he's like, hey guys. So he's talking almost to the kind of proletariat or lumpen proletariat or whatever, the working class about, hey, this is what these guys are capable of. Be careful. And I really should read those speeches. They're really something else. Like it's a distillation of all this Gulag Archipelago stuff, but we're in it right now. So
I read that book when I was in 6th grade. Can you believe that?
That's good. Did it stick? I mean, it's long. It's a very detailed book, right?
Yeah. It probably got a bit of whatever reason I read it. I did enjoy it. I think I read it again, a couple of years later. But I mean, we can't. The thing is that this is a climate we are moving towards, and part of that is this. Number one, of course, is permanent revolution. So it's always going to be changing, always ramping up, and you also never know what your ground is, right? You don't know. You say this, you say that. You know what I mean? Like I was rereading Tom Wolfe, electrical and acid test, and just surprising. He has completely blatantly racist passages in there, just over the top, like really talking about this guy. He calls him Big Nig. I don't go into the details, but it's just funny that that's the kind of thing. I'm not condoning it, but I mean, just like this kind of language shift. Fast forward to another year, but now it's of course, like in the universities, everywhere. It's really, and there are people, they become very easily offended, and this is the shock
It's
troops of the.
Yeah, it's part of the revolution, like you said. That offensive is manufactured. They're really not offended. They're just part of the revolutionary spirit, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Like they're taking offense so that they can get something. Because you can say one wrong word and your whole career is gone. And that's what happened to Solzhenitsyn got thrown into the gulags for something he said about Stalin in a private communication, not something he published.
Yeah. Well, that's the ideal, right? This control grid, but anyways, so William, let's as we sort of traverse through the show, and again, like to thank everybody for joining me. This is my first podcast under my own imprimatur, and my first guest is Mr. William Ramsey. So, William, um, in the pre-show, you mentioned a couple topics you were looking into, and definitely the Gilgo Beach thing is quite interesting to me. If you wanted to talk about the Pilgrim Society as well, or anything else you'd like to bring up, but I think the Gilgo Beach is, it kind of brings us back to when, if you're old enough to remember, the serial killer, like, this is one of the things that really hit me when I looked at this progression, and because I grew up, as a kid, I mean, there were serial killers everywhere. Suddenly, just boom, you have mass school shootings, kind of dissolved, right? But these Gilgo Beach is sort of a return to that. Sometimes these are hyped up events, but there's a lot of weird things on that case. So I don't know if you'd like to research is brought up.
Yeah, no, it's really intense because a lot of things have happened recently. I mean, for people who don't know the background, it was called Lisk, Long Island serial killer. They found bodies in Long Island. Basically, it's a Long Island, east and west, but there's kind of like the beach system is almost kind of the beaches are out on this kind of adjacent land, and bodies were buried there. And then they kind of they had so many strange characters, Hans, in this whole investigation. There was this guy Burke who got caught with porn and was into drugs, who was like the chief of police or something there. And then they had another killer that was around there, and his name was like he was doing other killings. He was a similar kind of person. He was like victimizing sex workers, and a lot of the women who were found there in the burial area were sex workers. They're dismembered, like really hardcore stuff. But they couldn't find it. And there was a really good podcast about it. So they never found anybody, but then they got somebody competent to look at some of the cases, DNA, and they traced it back. Like the weird thing also about the serial killing is that the guy who did the killing would call the family members and mock them, like really dark, hardcore stuff. But it led back to this guy, Rex Huerman, alleged serial killer, right? But then he got charged with 4 killings. He had really gnarly. He lived in kind of Massapequa, not a very big house, but he had really gnarly. His porn history had like 11-year-old kids, people crying and stuff, like really dark. But it like something. There was even a recent turn. So even earlier this month, the prosecutor Tierney added 2 additional charges. So they found 2 additional bodies that they could trace back to Rex Huerman, but further down from Gilgo Beach. So it was in this other part of Long Beach was one, and I don't remember where the other one was, but it's expanding beyond. And so his family lineage too, I was looking into his genealogy, and I had a really good interview. So the 6th was Tierney adding 2 additional murder charges for 2 additional victims to Rex Huerman. Then a week later, a local attorney who represented one of the victims, her name was Shannon, I can't remember her last name. His name was John Ray, and his assistant, Lena A.J.I.T. Adjett, had a press conference near Huerman's house, and somebody had gone back through it and looked at the remaining kind of social media that was still on there. Like the family scrubbed. The family's still living in the same house where Rex Huerman lived, which is kind of weird. She divorced him, or is divorcing him, and going to court in kind of like a sympathetic way. That's the allegation, is like she hasn't run for the hills or disappeared. She's from Iceland. She hasn't gone back to Iceland. Anyway, they checked his daughter's social media. She's interested in some of the gnarliest stuff imaginable, like cutting up, cannibalism, fetishism, furry kind of stuff. And this is the stuff that they found. So the mother and the daughter were into very dark stuff. John Ray called it hard vor, V-O-R-E, not hardcore, but like voracious and stuff like that. And there's hints of like cannibalism and things like that that may be done by, and it seems like what John Ray said, I could be wrong, but he said that she would like things. Victoria is his daughter, and then Rex Huerman would come in behind it and like it as well. So they were tied in their social media. So he knew what she was doing. And then I talked to them. I had an interview with them, and Lena sent me something that said his uncle, so his dad's brother, was involved in a lawsuit where there were allegations of satanic ritual abuse at a church, at a Lutheran church in upstate New York. And I was like, no way. Well, Lena sent me the links to which I can put in the show notes here, sent me links to the court cases. So I was just like, well, I might as well have a read. And that was another eye opener. It was astonishing, like long-term abuse over time with multiple victims in the context of other murders in upstate New York of young girls who were around there. It was like, it brought to mind the girl with the dragon tattoo story, where, I mean, I'm going to ruin the whole plot for everybody, but basically a guy's brought in to research why his daughter disappeared. The reason she disappeared is she found out her brother and her dad were abducting, murdering, and torturing children, and that then it involved a dungeon, and they say that that's what Rex Heuermann had allegedly is like like some kind of downstairs area where he might have taken some of these people. Um, but yeah, so the uncle's name is Walter Heuermann, same name, and so it is so crazy. So they knew each other, and there was depositions where he didn't really state his nephew's name, which is strange. And these happened recently. Like I think the case was settled 2022 or 2023, so just last year. So you see the arrest of Rex and the civil case of Walter happening almost concurrently. Like it's incredible. And these are a long term. The reason that it happened, I don't know if you remember some of these cases, but New York State passed like a child welfare act that allowed the statute of limitations to be told. It allowed the statute. So if you had some kind of abuse from the past, you could bring a new case. And a lot of new cases were brought. I can't remember some of the other new cases. Like I think the one against Trump was because of this legislation that was passed in Albany. So you have to read this court case. It's it's really very dark, like her allegations. And then one of the interesting parts is that the attorneys hired an expert from Stanford by the name of, I think it's Spiegel, expert in hypnosis, who has his own self-hypnotism app. So you can have a Stanford, doctor who's like, I think he's the head of it, the study of advanced hypnosis or something. Like, can you imagine like what they're doing, tampering with people? And on the surface, it's like, oh, stop smoking, lose weight. But they can probably farm for hypnotic subjects to do that, which is really scary. But he said that this victim who came forward had like 50 or 40 alter personalities. So they shattered this SRA or whatever doing, literally shattered her brain and made her like a multi-personality, like ruined her life. And so all those kind of allegations of things happening, Candy Jones or whatever, was all verified by this doctor with great credentials from Stanford in the court case currently, like 2 years ago. Like it's not some kind of thing that you have to dust off, like go back and find a court case. So that's Walter Heuermann. Now, when they were looking, like you have to kind of see the context of the research into the Gilgo Beach, because they were just kind of going in and getting more and more information. John Ray, I mean, it's so terrifying. So John Ray's client Shannon, there was a recording of her calling the police that was hidden or not disclosed to the public. And they just said, and they actually, I think they said that she accidentally drowned, like smiley face killing, something like that, which was total nonsense, absolute total nonsense. And, but she was saying like she was at somebody else's house screaming. And so there might be the possibility that they're attributing deaths of these sex workers to Rex Heuermann that really aren't his victims, that may not be his victims. But he seemed to be networked within a larger BDSM kind of kinky sex worker environment in he used to go to this place in Manhattan, which was very well known, called Pandora's Box, which is a BDSM. So he was a client, and it gets really dark. Like he was networked, and they don't know he was moving a lot. He had property in Las Vegas. He had contacts or connections to New Jersey, I think North Carolina or South Carolina. He had property next to his brother, who was in a DUI accident and killed somebody. And then there's like, I mean, it's just something else. So that family, when they found one of the bodies had a belt with the initials WM on them, on a belt. What's the initials of his uncle? Walter Heuermann. And his grandfather is William Heuermann. So it's not RM, right? It's not RH, excuse me, for Rex Heuermann. Why is there a WM or on this belt? So it indicates there was another case. There was another claim. Okay, where they found this one body was kind of on the eastern part of Long Island, But there was a claim by somebody at this park, like he walked in on like a satanic ritual in there. He's like, we walked in, there was a bunch of people, they had flame, torches, and we got the hell out of there. So we don't know the totality of what's going on, but when the trial starts, it'll be incredible to see what they put forward. But yeah, really creepy, super creepy, current serial killing type stuff. And there's probably many more victims. One of the things about serial killing, like they had this guy out, his name, I can't remember what is now. He was a very well-known expert on serial killers, but he came on, Brancato was his name, Brancato, I think. But he came on and said, the average serial killer starts when they're 25 or 30. And Huerman was 59 at his arrest. So what's he been doing for 30 years? And how many people? He seemed to have a real mean streak, cruelty streak. So what's he been doing for 30 years? And that's an open question. So there's a lot. Yeah, Snuff Ring. People are talking about snuff films. I think they said they found snuff films at Huerman's place, where they had some films there. And I think that was the same thing with Burke. He either was a the Burke guy had like gnarly porn too, like something weird about him too. So the Rex Huerman, Lisk, Gilgo Beach murders happened in the context of really dark, connected, heavy duty stuff.
Well, no, this is really fascinating because, oh, by the way, I'm not able to get in the chat because of my password, but I just appreciate everybody. That's a few people said they gave me congratulations for my first show. I'm really nervous. My hands are sweating. But it's it's really nice that this isn't nice, but it's good that you're able to draw out some of these points because it reminds me of several different cases. I mean, of course, with the whole with the Gacy, Gacy was, and then the whole of course, even the Zodiac thing, but many of these that seem like these are just, or Dahmer, right? Dahmer, they just pinned all these murders on Dahmer, right? And so,
or Atlanta child killings.
yeah,
Like they found the one, or Sons of Sam, right?
Son of Sam, perfect. They had down at that the mansion, with the Satanic Gathering, and even
which is on Long Beach, by the way. So Roy Reagan,
yeah. So I'm wondering, like the Dutroux in Belgium, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if this is like a tip. It seems because it's intergenerational, potentially this intergenerational family, and then there's some of these other threads. So I'm kind of interested. You mentioned the uncle was doing like ritual type, so maybe a little bit in that, and then also though, because Rex, I mean, do you think there was sometimes you find with these people, they are allowed to operate for a long time?
That's a great question. And that's kind of what the thing is was Rex Huerman, or were these people involved or friends with some of these guys in, the politics? That's why he's allowed to keep operating, because they're in on it. So it's a larger network. Rex Huerman gets arrested. Guess who shows up at his house?
Who?
Rudy Giuliani.
No way.
Yeah.
No, Rudy.
And he's friends with this other guy, Plaka, who was a Monsignor or something high up in the Catholic Church. Rex is Catholic. Plaka also, I think, under the same Child Abuse Act, gets sued for abusing kids 20 or 30 years ago. So this is his brother, this is his uncle Kenneth when he was still alive. I mean, this guy, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. What is it? I can't remember it now, but he reminds me of a character from a horror movie. But yeah, the one with the little ball that flies around.
Oh yeah.
Yes. What is that one? Do you remember the name of that? Somebody in those comments probably knows.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But anyway, he reminds me that's him. But yeah, so anyway, what's Giuliani doing over there? Why is he friends with Plaka? Plaka lived across the street from this guy that apparently Shannon, one of the victims, was at. So it gets really sketchy. And that's kind of one of the strange reasons why they couldn't focus on Rex, is there was so much muddying of the kind of information on the investigative information. Some of it just wasn't correct. And it also indicates a larger network that these people were involved in, Hellraiser. Yeah, I think is it Hellraiser? Yeah, anyway. Yeah, but she was involved. Victoria was involved in some dog thing that I think it might have been a um, best friends group that is Phantasm. Very good. Super Roro.
Yeah,
You ever seen
Phantasm. That's it.
Phantasm? Yeah,
Yes, I
great
have. Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Really creepy movie.
Well,
This guy reminds me.
it's I'm always a little bit interested in these sort of extended families. So, like what do you know about his father? I know that he said his father was an aerospace engineer who
Yeah,
built satellites and dabbled in furniture making. But it's are there some other backgrounds, right? Because I mean, Giuliani, and he also, he's for him going to this guy's house, why would he put that risk, right, on himself and
good
that
question.
taking? And who is this guy Ehrman? I mean, he look like at least I saw like his wife and family almost look like feral. You know what I mean? And he's all very slick, intelligent, successful guy, and his wife and daughter is almost like they were imprisoned or something. Not imprisoned, but they're pretty. But I'm just wondering this. So that belt, huh? So there we go.
So
William
that's
here.
the belt. That's WH. I was wrong. So the uncle's name is Kenneth. The father's name, the grandfather is William G. Huerman,
Mm,
who had 15 grandchildren, two brothers, and I think the father of Rex is George, whose
mhm.
brother is Kenneth. And George passed away when Rex was very young, I think 12 or 14 years old. So, um, yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know. They maybe. I mean, there are connections between Kenneth and Long Island and some of these. So they kind of are spread out. Like it's definitely a network of family members. So there's a lot more questions to ask, actually, that this whole case unloads. But just the fact that the uncle is involved in literal, like the woman said that she was abused on an altar and like multiple guys and cars, she got stuffed in the trunk, like really horrible stuff. And the standard thing that these pedophiles do is threaten to kill them, right? And so they threaten to kill her, like, you better not tell anybody or we'll kill you. So, yeah. And then there's the Atlantic City alibi. Dystopian Deep Dives mentioned that. Apparently, according to John Ray, um, the wife, whose name is Asa, from Iceland, there was like something that she says she was out of town for one of the killings, which wasn't true. Somebody checked the hotel records and she wasn't there. So why was she probably didn't expect somebody to check and confirm that she was there, but they couldn't confirm it. So then why is she lying about a fake alibi? And
Mm.
they were swingers apparently. So like it gets kind of dark. And Rex Huerman's a big dude. Like he's 6'4". He's at least 300 pounds. He has to wear specialty like clothes and stuff, suspenders and things. So
Now,
it's like, and they defined him or described him as an ogre, like
no,
not a good thing. But yeah, so there's a lot more to this case. I'll be studying it in greater detail. But just the fact that when Kenneth Huerman was abusing kids, there was another victim who came forward too. By the way, it wasn't just a named person. So when he was abusing kids, these other girls disappeared crimes were never solved.
huh, so yeah, you wonder like if these are, like the whole, like say the process church, involved in the Son of Sam, and the way that even the stuff is revealing stuff, but it's also hiding it, right? It's not it's limiting the actual outcomes, and somehow this it seems similar to that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, can you go back to that previous picture? And I
Yeah,
wonder though.
this is a better one. This is kind of the two girls that were done. This is Syracuse, New York. That's around. He was in Awesome or so. I forgot the name of it, but outside of Syracuse is where Kenneth Huerman's church was, where he was like involved for 30 years.
Wow. And
Go
you,
watch. People go watch. If you get a chance, go back and don't watch the Girl of the Dragon Tattoo, the American version. See if you can find the Swedish version with the subtitles. It's much better, even though the American one's pretty good. It's much better. I think it's better acted, but it's creepy because it's just like this, because the investigators going back and looking at old unsolved murders in newspapers, just like this, like people did for this. There was a really good posting on murder. I can't remember the name of the website. Let me see if I can find it. Murder in Corp on WordPress.com. Let me see if I can pull it up, actually. Yeah, I can. Here it is. But it's really good. And it'll give you, it'll, you know, it'll freak you out.
Yeah, you just wonder though, is he, going to be the fall guy for this bigger organization, or not? Because this is where a lot of times the stuff you start getting these inklings, right, and then it can just be. You've probably seen this before in a lot of different cases you've looked at, right?
Covered up, yeah. There's some other cases. I forgot who it was, but they brought in former FBI head. Was it Fleer? What was his name? Louis Free. And it was a cover up. It was the abuse case at Pennsylvania State.
Oh
Penn
yeah,
State, that was totally
yeah,
covered up.
yeah.
They just busted one guy. It was a ring. They busted the side. It ruined the old coach's career and his reputation. And then he died soon thereafter. But it was Roguski. Somebody knows that. What was the guy from Penn State? He liked boys. He liked little boys.
Wait,
Or
so
teens, I should say.
could you just go back to that very top of the page? No, just where the text started. Keep going down. I just saw some. Let's see.
This is the victim. So she actually has done this is the person whose lawyers brought the case. And I think they settled it. Now the case was for $45 million. That's what they were asking for. I don't know if they got it. Sandusky, thank you, Huggy Bear. The Sandusky case was covered up. So this might be the same thing. Somebody might be watching this going, guys, there's other people, there's some people involved in some dark stuff. We need to
ritual torture. Just go back a little. It just said that I don't know if it was him talking about over pizza his favorite serial killers, and his cousin Kenneth Bianchi. I just saw that. It was, I don't know who was. So
I don't know.
It's in there. Let me just see here.
People can look this up. It's murderincorp.wordpress.com.
I'll bring that up.
Wherever. I mean, I'll put it in the show notes. Let me see if I can do this.
Yeah. No, it's sort of a red flag, right? You go, go out to lunch with someone and they start talking about their favorite serial killers.
Yeah, really. And he would do stuff like that. Rex would do, he would say strange off-color stuff, and apparently that was it. So, yeah, but she's there. That's her. This is the woman. She had a pseudonym. This is Kenneth with a bunch of kids, very creepy. And I think that her abuse happened between 90. When was it? In the 70s, I believe. I mean, this gets really graphic, but you can go in RW. That's the woman right here, right? This is Rex Heuermann's uncle, supposedly one of the perps, who at all times was a minor between the ages of 8 and 15 years of age in violation of the New York Penal Code, said rape, sodomy, torture, ritualistic sex acts, nude photographing, molestation, choking and binding, and lewd and lascivious acts.
Wow. And geez, so
we can get dark rooms, like stuff. I was in the semi-dark room, basement room with him, and very scared. And there were boxes of stuff, and we were going to get the clothes. I was very nervous. And then he took, it just gets worse. Like these are, and he was deposed too. And this is a letter that she sent to somebody else in the church that was never, solved in 2007. So she was always, I think, complaining that, hey, guys, I got abused. And I think this is a relative who's in the FBI, George Heuermann.
But then George, so he's talking about his father being a satellite developer and a furniture maker. That doesn't seem that. So he's there with J. Edgar Hoover. Wow. The town of Babylon also. So it looks like 11 bodies. I'm just kind of looking on the others. 11 bodies. So do you think, how many victims do you think is from Rex himself?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, he was a thinking killer. They found in the most recent talk, Tierney, who's the DA, said they did some forensic data mining on he had tons of different electronic equipment, like 300 different pieces of electronic equipment. But they did one and they found a deleted file of him planning his murder. So he was like, do this time, don't do this. We'll see it probably once he goes to trial, but it showed that he was like, plotting and thinking it out, like in a clever way.
Yeah, no, that I'm familiar with. So he had it was a full like Excel spreadsheet, every single possible,
Yeah, don't do
parameter.
this. Don't make this mistake again. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was very clever. Like they got him. He would use burner phones, so he would call and they could tell that it was coming from certain cell towers in Manhattan, but they couldn't place the individual. And I think it was through the DNA, like they figured it out. But yeah, this is a very dark deposition. I mean, then there's the Luther League, so there's like a kids league too. Like it's almost like the Boy Scouts were Lutherans or something. It's just horrible. And these are like the girls who were murdered, Sioux slain teenagers. There's more than one actually. There were two 14-year-olds. Then the sedan that matched the one that Kenneth Uerman owned, which is not good. Black and blue sedan. Then this is another one, Roseanne Spina, Syracuse.
So it's at that upstate New York ish or that area. But so what's what refresh? You mentioned already, but who's the Stanford hypno
Spiegel.
therapist?
Yeah, let me see if I can
Spiegel.
find it.
So what's his exact connection or involvement? It was
They hired him. The plaintiff hired him as an expert witness.
okay.
They got the right guy. Like they found him like a true expert. He said, this is from Exhibit 21 from the Kenneth Uerman case. And we can just go over his David Spiegel. 401 Quarry Road, Stanford, California. I mean, you can go into, but the really telling thing for me is somebody who's like tracing hypnosis and hypnotic subjects who are really involved in American culture, much more so than you would think. But this is past president of the Society for Clinical and Experimental Hypnosis, 1995 to 1997.
Hmm.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Stanford University. So this is like where Arliss Perry died since 1976. I think Arliss Perry was like right around then, 74 or something. Weird. I'm not saying that he's involved in that. I'm just saying that it's crazy.
Wow.
He's won the Hilgard Research Award from the International Society of Hypnosis. I got to look up and see what the Hilgard Society is. But he conducted 10 interviews with the woman who we saw her picture of it, right? She has dissociative experiences, sexual, physical, emotional abuse. She has 40 alters of varying ages. So they split her personality. I don't know if they did it intentionally. I don't know, but this stuff happens. They're listening. I hear voices. Suzanne, Sarah, Serena, Samantha, Sylvia. They're here today listening. Some are amalgamated now. There were 40 at one time that were frequent. A rotating group of 40 of them. Now the goal was to integrate. The girls would braid in 3 together. I wore braids as a young girl a lot. There are 3 male names, Talus, Tybalt, and Tobias. They come in 3s. Jessica, she speaks French, and another girl. I studied French. So her brain is split. This is a list of the alters, dude. This is from 2021, so this is fairly recent. Dissociative episodes, blinking, emotional pain, abuse history. Sexually assaulted on baptismal fount. It's ritual abuse. It's marble basin with water, solid brick and stone around it. Brought up into the sanctuary. There was a lookout. That's very much a Masonic thing too, because they have they have a name for the lookout, which I can't remember. But so like when they do this dark stuff, there's somebody watching to not get caught. She was in the trunk. At the end, really, really bad abduction. I was rolled up in a cloth and thrown in the trunk. On the Richter scale, that is the worst one. They got out a sheet. I wouldn't even believe. Even I wouldn't believe. Mr. Rising, the other so-called perp who's dead. Opened the trunk, got out a sheet, tied up my wrist and legs with scratchy twine, wrapped me in the trunk of his car, which is weird, scratchy twine, because Rex Huerman put his bodies in a burlap bag, which is kind of like a hunter's bag. Like, it's kind of rough. They threatened to kill me, blah, blah, blah.
This is like hard.
Collected.
I mean, this is hard. I mean, and this goes beyond. I mean, this is. I would not be surprised if this is. This is a deliberate, whether it's outsourcing, whatever level of involvement of creating these multiple fractured personalities, because and it just and like some of the things I've seen here, and I glanced at a few other things. They had like rocks written with like special letters and symbols. They would pile it around them. They made them wear ceremonial robes. I mean, I look at this. I mean, they are. This is the terror, right? It's not just, and it seems. I mean, it's man. Wow. They really it fractured her mind. Jesus.
And she has triggers, so she uses these words. It took 3 hours to get over of that. There are tons of triggers in the world. The color black is extremely powerful. Powerful. The minister at the church was the ringleader of the other people. He always wore his black liturgical clothes. So I tell men, doctors, physical therapists to wear their white coat. He, the minister, was totally dressed in black. I dissociate. I mean, it's super creepy. Like they were creepy as hell. It's like they had an above board Christian outward, and then internally they were just abusing. And I mean, if this one comes forward, what's the number of the ones that come forward as opposed to people who just don't want to think about it and don't sue, right? Like how many other abused people do you think this guy saw? Just like Rex, right? Like how many people do they abuse before they get caught? I heard the number is really high. Somebody probably knows that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, like I don't know if the Maitloff is the same guy that was head of the American Society of Hypnotists, and he had this one lecture that only part of it survived. I think it was like the late '80s, early '90s, and he's talking about the whole structure of the grid, how the grid is generated for these personalities, and he said he ended up coming across like Dr. Green and stuff like that. These different coders and these similar arrays, right, of these structures, including personalities that are that will self-destruct, right? But it's a Spiegel. So I think no, she may have gone to the other one, but man, this is hardcore. I mean, this is like
really hardcore. Two hardcore events next to each other. Like wow, like crazy.
So it said that that the brother, I think his dad or whatever, lived near the Hillside Strangler. His same time, he lived in the same area.
Bianchi, yeah,
Yeah,
like
Beyonce
that,
when they were committing those murders, and that's who he says his favorite serial killer is. He flew some girl out on a date over pizza. Who's your favorite serial killer? That's kind of that's
so
that's
crazy.
if that's kind of your fault if you don't see that as a red flag, I guess. But but so this guy's the real deal. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
In terms of
no,
that.
there's no question, no question. Let me see if I can find. This is the version of the girl with the dragon tattoo that people should watch. I don't know if you can find it. It's probably on Amazon, but it has who are the actors? Michael Nyquist and Numi Rapace. Better than the American version, and it's like this. It's like this whole Huerman situation. Crazy. But yeah, no, I mean, the thing about these court cases is there are people putting together all this information for you, these lawyers and stuff. So, you in deposition, you're not supposed to lie in depositions. That's what got, what's her face? Ghislaine Maxwell in trouble. Lying in a deposition.
Yeah, no, this is well, one of those cases because it went on for a long time, right? So these
Yeah.
and it was years they could never catch anybody for this.
Yeah.
And
It was a
so,
great mystery. It was incredible. Like some of the first cases are in the 90s, right?
Mhm.
So it's been a while. Like there's a lot of questions why they didn't catch him. A lot of questions.
And did you see that reference that his father was like, one of the most powerful police officers in this state? Did you, or George Huerman? That was in one of these on that Murder Incorporated site, but
Let's
I
go
don't
back to that.
know.
Let me see if I can find that.
There's something a little
That's
fishy.
suspicious too. Like, why don't if you want to cover, become a cop, right? It's a good cop. And they said that in her abuse, that girl said that there was somebody who was dressed as a police officer. Then she never knew his name. So it's pretty wild.
But
71 to 78. She had gone to these other people at the church, just like the Catholic Church, you know. She went and complained to other people at the church, and they told her to pound sand, I think. This guy was still alive 2019. I think I don't know if Kenneth Huerman is here. Oh, and it also happened within the context of other abuse cases. So it wasn't just Kenneth Huerman. There was another guy. Buffalo News from 2019, Bruce Connolly. Never ending, a lot of, I guess there's another case of like guys, Frank Brundage. Yeah, bad. It's bad. Child Victims Act is the one. Other face now named in sex abuse lawsuits. 4 of 7 new cases are outside Catholic Church. So it's a great site. Whoever collected this information did a great job. And they say that one of the interesting overlaps with this child abuse is that a lot of the victims of alleged serial killer Rex Huerman were petite, like they were small. Like there was one that was under 5 feet tall. And Rex, they have his records of like the porn he was looking at. And it was like 11-year-old girl crying and stuff, you know. So there may be some kind of weird overlap between what Kenneth was doing and Rex. There's people have to find, or researchers have to try and find the overlap, right? They're not that far away, right? Upstate New York from Long Island is what, 200 miles, if that? I don't really know. It's not that far.
yeah. And that I'm sorry, her name's escaping me. The lady who did a lot of the work on like the Kinsey report and stuff like that.
Oh,
You know,
yeah. Judith
Judith Reisman,
Reisman.
yeah. But one thing she talked about, or she discussed, is how the actual church, they started recruiting people that had all these potentials to become pedophiles on purpose, and phasing and getting people out of seminary who would, were not following that. So it was actually uh,
Right.
it was ended up being, it was a recruitment, and it was also a an encoding, right, in order to people that weren't comfortable would drop out, but then you promote people who have these tendencies, and then this was done, in various ways.
So it's self-sustaining. They had a pedophile scandal, Catholic Church in Chile, where all of the main heads of the Catholic Church were either arrested or they were all fired because they were all in on it. Can you believe it? Like the top 10 Catholics in Chile. So that's what you do. You join the Boy Scouts, you become a priest. If you want access to kids, that's what you have to do, one of those jobs. That's the whole idea. So yeah, it's bad. Like the Spotlight movie and the Spotlight the real investigation showed it wasn't like a flash in the pan. It was endemic to at least the Catholic Church. And there's a lot of these they just had a guy the other day who was from a Protestant church who like abused a 12-year-old and got fired. He was well respected. So it seems to be like church kind of thing. The Catholics, yeah. So anyway, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah, no, we'll have to see how this case continues.
Yeah,
to
there's
develop.
a lot. I've got it down. There's a lot more to this Huerman clan, because if the girl's looking at really hardcore torture porn, the dad's involved supposedly, allegedly, and Kenneth is doing this stuff. Like, does it go all the way back up to William? Where does it stop? Like all these other people, do they have court cases? Like, what's going on? Like I think those are important questions.
No, then how did Giuliani
Let me see if I can
defend his?
find that.
That's wild, because
Yeah,
you think, who is the guy? Isn't it just there's millions of people in the New York area who this guy's not really particularly famous, right? He's a what, an architect.
Well, they think that he was in gun clubs, so he liked to shoot. Rex Huerman was a hunter and had 300 guns. Like, this is it. Like, look at this. This is from the New York Post, dude. This is it. Rudy Giuliani chats with cops outside of Gilgo Beach murder suspect's home as neighbors hold block party. There he is, smiling. Former Mayor Rudy Giuliani showed up at the Long Island residence of suspected Gilgo Beach serial killer Saturday, driving up and asking an officer how close he could get to the home. Does that mean anything? I don't know. I would think I would stay away, but
Well, he's sending a message just by going there, right? Because he's got a lot of power. He's saying something, you know, like you may find some things. I remember when they were doing the search when this first happened, right? They had so what else did they find in the house? Because I saw partially what was going on with the.
I think they found a lot of stuff like porn. They found guns. I can't remember what else. It wasn't I remember it's not a very big house. He had other properties, but I think the house was only like 400 square feet. Like they didn't really upgrade it. And you can see like the exterior kind of roof is being held up by like plywood that somebody else made.
Yeah,
Like it's not part of the I don't know if you can see a picture of it, but kind of like a sloppy job. They didn't hire somebody to do it. He seemed to have money, like mysteriously had money and property worth a lot of money. But I don't remember. Maybe somebody in the chat room knows more about cameras, laptops. Yeah. He had over 300 pieces of electronic equipment, which seems extraordinary. Like you think you could just get rid of it.
did they find anything in his other properties?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know. He had that property I mentioned next to his brother. And then I think you had a timeshare or something in Vegas. So, yeah, rich guy, crappy house. And I was talking to John Ray, who's been involved in the case since 2011, right? So he's been like working with the mother. I mean, that one family, Shannon's like totally tragic because the mother was killed by her daughter, schizophrenic daughter. So she loses one child to like allegedly to Rex, and then her other daughter kills her. Can you believe it?
Jeez.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
So yeah, there's I have to kind of brush up on my Gilgo Beach, but just the new information that came out is really extraordinary. It's still happening. Like this Tierney was just this month. The Tierney, it was weird because there were back-to-back press conferences, one by the DA and then this guy John Ray is a lawyer for Shannon, whose name I can't remember right now.
Yeah, I mean, there is like, how about the finders? Going back to that, remember that?
Yeah, 100%.
So what happened with that? Nothing, right? They were told to shut down the investigation. So this may not be to that extent, but or maybe it's just, I mean, this guy's
It's crazy. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think the public is really interesting. Shannon Gilbert was her name. That was 2011. Shannon Gilbert, and then she made an emergency 911 call that night saying she feared for her life.
How many victims is he? Do you think he has? Or
Well, I bet my own opinion is he's probably killed 10 or 20 people at least. They just don't know where they are. So I think that he's probably killed before, but they just haven't, pinned things on him yet. So we will see. I mean, like I said, he probably started in his 20s and he's 59. So what's he been doing, And he was there was one affidavit that I got from Lena, which was like he was out, he was doing coke with some woman, like a sex worker, and I want to see you again, blah blah blah. So, I mean, it's just extraordinary, yeah.
well,
And there's just more bodies all over Long Island, so he might have been dumping bodies all over the place. I don't know. I don't know.
yeah, it's well, that's in these cases, and it's obviously not the serial killers have not gone, even though they kind of stepped out of the media for a while.
Yeah.
But
This guy was different. He was smart. He he kind of tried to cover his tracks and not get caught.
so the motivation was just
I think he was into her making people hurt. You know, I think that was it. I think he was like a torture torture person, and I think it seemed like if he had like little women who were 5 feet tall, they were maybe stand-in for younger people.
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see this guy Gary Bricado is like a known figure. Let me see if I can find his picture. But this guy, I've seen this guy on other true crime shows. Let me see. Let's see this. There he is. But he was at this John Ray press conference. So he's done a couple books, like Inside Evil or something like that. So he's kind of a well-known forensic investigator, I guess is what you could call him. But yeah, so there's other one of the stunning things from John Ray's, like I've done investigations into kind of the far right, but one of the pictures that they showed from Victoria's social media is this picture of somebody. I mean, it's very torn up, right? Somebody's had their body part cut off, but this guy in the picture is wearing the right wing death mask, right?
Okay.
That's what Adam Waffen wore.
Mm.
So yeah. And Dystopian says quoted Manhunter book and records. Yeah, that's right. So there's actually a tie to John Douglas, who I've critiqued, but he read Mindhunter, right? So Mindhunter has all these other crazy serial killers. So he
Mm.
knows what he is, right? He
Mhm.
knows he's self-aware.
So that Adam Waffen, right? And then
Yeah, that's the Adam Waffen mask.
that ties into the Church of Nine Angles, or what's it
Yeah,
called? Doesn't
Order
it?
of Nine Angles.
Order of Nine Angles. I mean,
It
yeah,
might get dark. It might get far darker, you know.
yeah.
And the other thing is some of these guys may be looking at his, forensically looking at his data and overlook some of the stuff. Because John Ray didn't know this. He didn't mention the far right racist kind of man. This is almost like a Nazi swastika for the far right. They all wear this.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, they didn't. And there's just all kinds of cold. There's other cold cases they're looking at. John Douglas books. She grew up in that environment because if he was doing it for a long time, there was supposedly a kill box basement. He likened it to another case where it was in New Mexico, and he was called the kill box killer, and he would have actual women find victims and he would take them to like a torture chamber, like a mobile torture chamber, and torture them to death. He just liked it. And he went to court, he got arrested, and he had a heart attack before trial. Very convenient because it might have been more people, you know what I mean? Like it's convenient when these guys croak before they go to like a trial where all the evidence is disclosed.
Yeah, yeah. It's hey, you wonder. Well, I mean, intergenerational, but then some connections, and then with the there's because there's some from the uncle, right? There's some bodies found, right, too, that in the
Yeah,
70s, 60s, 70s, whatever. And there was multiple people involved in that. No one else ever got brought up, right? So no
right.
one's, you know.
Right. And here's another picture that John Ray showed at this press conference, which is really right out of True Detective, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Antlers. This is on somebody's social media. It's very dark. And this, like, the crow is like a bad omen. Sometimes Satan takes the form of a crow in witchcraft. And this is kind of like Ray said one of the bodies was posed kind of like this. So there might be witchcraft. And I think somebody found that the woman, his wife, sister wrote books on witchcraft or something, like from an Icelandic perspective or something.
So you got a whole tie
So
there.
yeah, crazy, just crazy stuff.
Yeah. Well, great. So William, we're getting close to, I think, about an hour, about 90 minutes, and we discussed going about that particular time. So is there anything else you'd like to bring up or mention, or or
Just kind of working. I'm on past my 1200th episode, and I'm trying to get a few more listeners so I can hire somebody. So if anybody can share my show and your show on social media, I'd appreciate it. And But yeah, I've got some good things on the horizon. I did a show on the Pilgrim Society and kind of like its overlap to the JFK assassination. I just did a 3-part series on the Patty Hearst kidnapping and mind control, and how many CIA doctors were around her. And she admits it in her own biography. It's really interesting. So people can check that out. And just kind of did the Huerman stuff. And I read a part of the court case into the record on my podcast, William Ramsey Investigates, if people want to listen to that. And I also interviewed John Ray and his legal assistant, Lena Adjett, so you can listen to that. So there's a lot of interesting new information. Maybe the media didn't cover as much, so you can find it on William Ramsey Investigates.
Great. All right, William. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I'd like to thank, of course, William for letting me use his video platform. So I'm going to have my own next time. But and it's been, we just keep going on this journey and keep developing. And as the more knowledge comes out, I think it's a lot of this is based on the control of the mind, of the potential, right? So once, it's what I think is a valuable service to people. So please support William and my website, hansutter.com. And I used to do my show every Sunday night, so maybe I'll just stick to that since it's Sunday night. So, and yeah, great. And William, where they can they find your work?
Yeah, you can find my website, William Ramsey Investigates. I post a lot on Twitter or X. It's the only place that I don't seem to be censored or nanny stated or somebody telling me I insulted somebody. And my 5 books are on Amazon, or you can buy them from my website. My Patreon, I'm pretty active. If you want to listen to my show without ads, you can go to my Patreon page and check that out. My 5 videos are on there, 5 documentaries you can watch just $5 a month. So check that out, and you can reach me there. And yeah, if you have any questions, send them over. I posted some of the information from the press conference on my Patreon page, so you can download it there if you want. And thanks for having me. I'm honored to be your first guest. So thanks so much, Hans. Appreciate
Thanks, William, and thanks for everyone that's been listening and participating in the chat. And wish everyone a wonderful, wonderful end of June, and wish everyone peace, prosperity, and happiness. Thank you.
Amen.
Thanks for joining us.
Amen. It's Hans Uter, eyes wide open, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Eyes wide open, Hans Uter Investigates. All right. I'm ending the stream.